Good morning, doorknobs. Only a few days left of listening to me yap, and then you guys get to be ninth graders. Woohoo! At least most of you. Looking at the assignment, there are 32 of you that still have not taken my test, and not taking that test probably gives you a no grade, which probably means summer school. So please get that caught up there. I'm a little bit ahead of myself. You're going to want to watch today's video because we're going to start. I'm going to try to make it as quick as I can and definitely not go into as much detail, but I want to get into World War One. This isn't even something we have to do, but it's kind of fun stuff because a lot of people wonder, how did it become a world war? We've never seen anything like the scope and scale of World War One before. So it's big. It's something that the world had never seen before, and it makes all the rest of the wars that the world had seen look tiny. At the time, it wasn't called the World War. It was called the Great War, and they certainly didn't call it World War One because they also called it the War to End All Wars. It was so big, they really believed there would never be another need for another war. So how does it get started? And I'm going to try to not mislead you, but I'm going to tell you a pretty good story about how it gets started that leads to something that really is the cause. So it's I'll leave it at that for now. And then, Sophie, don't die. Okay, so that's a little bit dramatic, but you're going to want to watch the whole video today because it's a pretty good story, and I'll try to make it as brief as I can and give you an introduction to the beginning of World War One. So if we look at today's slides, I'll try to make it as big as I can here. Yeah, I put it in camo for you, but chapter 23, World War One and its legacy. We certainly aren't going to get through World War One, but we're going to do the best that we can. So we'll start this sucker off. So how's this thing begin? Well, here's the thing. The guy you see in the picture there, his name is Archduke Francis Ferdinand, or as they say in Austria, Franz Ferdinand. The dude has a sweet mustache, and I can't explain what's the deal with all the ropes tied around his neck there, but if we kind of classify this in modern language and the way we speak today, Francis Ferdinand being the Archduke of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it's kind of like he's the prince. His dad is the big dog. He has powers, but his powers are diplomatic, which means he'll go to other countries and or parts of his country and talk to people really nice and smile and be in parades and stuff like that. So he's not all that well loved. And I wish I would have put a map in. Well, here, let's just really quick, I'm going to go into Facebook because we don't need to see that. And I'll pull up a World War One map. Should have done this ahead of schedule, sorry. Images for World War One map. Oh, this one looks nice. Let's use this one. Bam, ba-bam. Okay. Whoa, what happened? Stop. Who's doing this? Okay, it's slowly thinking about letting us see this map. I'll try to blow it up again. Okay, so you see here the Austrian Empire, Austria-Hungary. It's an empire. And I'll point out these countries so you know. This is in Europe. Here we have a country called Serbia. Serbia is small. Austria is large. Germany is large. Russia is large. France is big. Here's United Kingdom. That's England. Here's Spain. So here's Italy. Put everything into perspective. A country called Montenegro, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, which is also called the Ottoman Empire at the time. So kind of use this as perspective. This is a large area. Now, the people that lived in Serbia were fearful that the people that lived in Austria might try to expand their empire. So an empire is like you're always growing, like the blob, and you grow and overtake everything in your path. So Serbians didn't necessarily like Austrians. And even parts of the people that lived in what is the Austro-Hungarian Empire didn't like being part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but they were powerless to do anything about it. So Archduke Francis, or Franz Ferdinand, decides to travel as a diplomatic venture to the city of Sarajevo, which would later become the capital of Yugoslavia, which was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. While he's there, There's this guy named Gavrilo, sometimes there's an O on the end of his name. Princip was hanging out also. Princip was a Serbian. Remember, I told you the Serbians did not like the Austrians. And Princip was a member of a gang called the Black Hand. I don't know why they called themselves that. I'd come up with something cooler like Fists of Righteous Harmony or something like that. But the Black Hand. And they came up with a plan. These guys were so stupid. It's 1914. They're tooling around through the city of Sarajevo in the Austro-Hungarian Empire on the border, real close to Serbia, where they're not really well liked. And even in Sarajevo, they weren't necessarily super popular about this guy. In a convertible automobile, in front of them, it was sort of like when you see the president's motorcade. In front there were cars, and in back there were cars. And then here you have Francis Ferdinand, who by the scale of the time was a good-looking dude. And you got his wife, Sophie, who was a hottie. She, however, had a bit of an issue. I wish I had a 74-minute class because I'd teach this for 2 hours if I could. She didn't have royal blood, so Francis Ferdinand kind of got on the bad side of his father and his royal family by marrying Sophie. But anyway, she was a sweetheart, and most people loved Sophie. So they're riding around in a sort of almost like a parade, just waving at people. And the problem is they advertised in the newspaper in Sarajevo the route they were going to take. So there was no surprise. So when Princip and the Black Hand find out what's going on here, they place themselves in positions to assassinate the Archduke. They are going to kill the guy with the nice mustache. So here's how it goes down. This is almost ridiculous. They're driving along, and the first choke point that they come to, the first place where the automobile driver, the Ferdinand's chauffeur, won't have any place to escape, is on a small, narrow bridge. And there's a guy placed there. There were like 4 or 5 people involved in this assassination attempt. There was a guy named, I don't know if this is right, Kabrivonic or something like that. He had a bomb. And as soon as Princip's automobile passed onto this narrow bridge, the guy chucked this bomb, sort of like a hand grenade. It was supposed to land right in the back in Ferdinand's lap and kablamo, kill both Ferdinand and his beautiful wife and make a statement for the Serbians that they didn't want the Austrians around. But it bounced off the trunk of Ferdinand's car, rolled on the ground, and exploded beneath the car behind them, which was one of Ferdinand's bodyguards. So a couple of his men are rushed off to the hospital. They're bleeding. They're wounded. They're like, ah! And Ferdinand is angry. His car takes off as fast as they can. They get to the mayor of Sarajevo, and he's like, oh, I'm glad you're here. And Ferdinand is still ticked. He's like, what? You tried to have me killed. You can't even protect me in your city. And he's mad. And he's supposed to give a speech, but he can't really do it. By the way, if we back up a little bit, the guy that threw the bomb, not very many people were happy with him, so they started to go after him. They tried to capture him. So this guy has in his pocket a glass capsule filled with a poison called cyanide. He pops it in his mouth, cracks it between his teeth to swallow the cyanide. You're like, well, swallow glass. Well, if you're trying to kill yourself, swallowing glass doesn't really bother you that much, I guess. So he takes poison, swallows it, then he runs as fast as he can and jumps off the bridge. He is committing suicide so that instead of being imprisoned and maybe forced or tortured into saying who else was members of the gang, the Black Hand, he kills himself. First, he fails at assassinating the Archduke. Then he fails to take into account that when he jumps into the bridge, the water beneath the bridge is only about a foot deep. So all of those people, this angry mob of people that are ticked that he tried to kill the prince, rush down the steep banks of the river. They grab this guy. They beat the tar out of him until he vomits, which means he chokes up the poison that was in his gut. The assassination attempt is completely busted. It does not work. So Ferdinand tells the mayor, he goes, I'm angry. So he says, I'm leaving. Gets back in his car. And he tells his chauffeur, instead of leaving Sarajevo, this is the kind of guy that Ferdinand was. He's a nice guy, and so was his wife. He says, take me to the hospital. he's not hurt. He wants to go to the hospital because he wants to visit his men who were wounded in the incident with the bombing. On the way to the hospital, his driver takes a wrong turn. He's not all that familiar with the area around Sarajevo, and he goes down a dead end. Well, it just so happens that as he goes down the dead end, people are screaming, "Oh, it's the prince, it's Archduke Ferdinand," and people are excited to see him there. And just as he goes past, well, there was this other guy from the Black Hand, Gavril Princip, who he heard that the assassination was a flop. He decided to duck into a tavern and have a few beers. So he's sitting in this bar having a few drinks, and he hears people screaming that the Archduke is driving by in his topless carriage, his motor car. So he comes popping out onto the street just in time to see the Archduke's car turning around. Dead end, had to turn around. So Princip jumps out with a tiny pistol, Derringer pistol, same type of pistol that was used to kill Abraham Lincoln, and he fires a shot, shooting the Archduke. It's a mortal wound. It's a gut shot. It's going to kill him. He fires a second shot, hits Sophie. Poor Sophie. So you've got the prince and his wife, or the Archduke and his wife, sitting in the back of this car, dying. Princip is pounded on by the bystanders, and they're angry. Some of them are happy, I suppose, because they didn't like the Austrians that much. And Francis Ferdinand, his last words, his dying words to his beautiful, lovely wife, Sophie, he says, "Sophie, Sophie, don't die. Live for our children." And he takes his final breath. And Sophie dies. So the Archduke has been assassinated. Now, at the beginning of World War I, there were already a couple of alliances. An alliance is like a partnership. You know, I've got your back if you've got mine. So the Central Powers were an alliance that was created from Austria-Hungary. They had a friend, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire, which we would today call Turkey, and Bulgaria, if you remember back to, I don't remember which map it was. Yeah, Bulgaria down here. So all the pink will become Central Powers. So we've got these alliances. People that they're like besties. So they promise, if you get in a fight, we've got your back. That's one of the alliances. So here's how the war starts. This event, by the way, the assassination of the Archduke, is not the event that starts the war, but it's kind of like, if you imagine if you're holding a firecracker in your fingers, it's July 4th and you're holding a firecracker, that firecracker itself doesn't really have any explosive power, but the potential for that firecracker to blow your hand off exists. It takes a spark or a match to light the fuse. So this assassination, it's sort of the match that lights the fuse. It's not the cause. The cause is these alliances. And I'll explain that in the, see the slides over here. So I'll explain how the war breaks out because of that. So this is the spark that lights the fuse that begins World War I. So here we go. Now I understand you can't read my handwriting, but we've got Gavrilo Princip from Serbia. We've got Francis Ferdinand from Austria-Hungary right here. So we got two different countries, little, big, powerful, not so powerful, bad guy, lovely prince that everyone seems to like, okay? This guy, Gavril Princip, murders this guy. He's dead. He's toast. So he starts it. So if I asked you, if we were in class and I said, raise your hand, who started World War I? We would all say it was Serbia, Mr. Bellamy, because Princip was from Serbia. But he wasn't acting as if he was sponsored by the countries. He was just a Serbian. Are there bad Americans? Yes. Are there bad Serbians? Yes. But that's not how Austria looks at this. So Francis Ferdinand is dead. So Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. That's what this means. Now, you don't have to declare war to fight a war, and I don't want to get into the details on that. But, you know, we haven't declared war on a country since World War II, the United States. And that's a long time ago, but we've fought a lot of wars since then. So once Austria declares war on Serbia, Serbia then is going to declare war on Austria. Now, I'm going to go a little bit into greater detail. I told you there were alliances that already existed. That was on the slide up here, the Central Powers. Serbia had a big brother, Russia. Their alliance was because they shared an ethnicity. Ethnicity in America is kind of a weird thing because we all sort of glom together in that tossed salad or that melting pot that we talked about in the last chapter. But the people in Russia consider themselves Slavic, Slavic. Serbians also considered themselves Slavic. So it's almost like they're different countries, but they're bros. So Russia says, you're not going to pick on my little brother Serbia. So Russia joins in to declare war on Austria. And as soon as that happens, Austria declares war on Russia. So what you're seeing here is we're getting a little mixed up here. This one assassination is starting to broil into something a little bit bigger. Well, Russia's not the only big dog. Austria also has friends. Germany. So Germany joins in now that Russia's there and declares war on Serbia and Russia. And then Russia declares war on Germany and Serbia declares war on Germany. Then the Germans and the Ottomans join together to declare war on Russia and Serbia. And then Serbia and Russia declare war on the Ottoman Empire. And then all of a sudden, the French get involved here. The French join the sides of the Russians because now this goes from being a war about the assassination of this guy to Germany really wanting to take over Europe. So Germany marches through a neutral country. Neutral means they're not taking sides. Belgium, which forces France to get involved with their friends Russia and Serbia. So France declares war on the Ottoman Empire, Germany, and Austria. Then Austria, Germany, and Ottoman Empire declare war on France. Holy bejeevers, this is getting deep. Then, because if France gets conquered, which could potentially happen, the British understand, Great Britain understands that they're next, so they declare war on the Ottoman Empire, on Germany, and on Austria, and then Austria and Germany and the Ottoman Empire declare war on Great Britain. So how does this become a world war? Because every one of these countries has other alliances, other buddies out there. So it's not just a war between these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 countries. It becomes bigger and ... And it continues to grow. In warfare, we call these entangling alliances. Where do we come up with the term entangling? Well, what is this? It looks like a knotted rope, or it looks like your hair in the morning, if you have hair, before you run a comb through it. It's tangled. What drew the Germans into this war? Their alliance with Austria. What drew the British into this war? It had nothing to do with Gavril Princip and Serbia. It had everything to do with their alliance with Russia and France. So the question that I've got for you at the top here, where's the United States belong in this mess? That's a difficult question to answer. Well, here's the thing. If you know anything about history, we fall right here. We fall in line with the British and the French and the Russians against the Germans. It's mostly the German aggressors that we're fighting in World War I. But it's not so easy. Most Americans want to remain neutral. We find ourselves at the beginning of the war right here, smack dab in the middle of this mess. Both sides want us. The Germans are like, America! And the British are like, come help us. So we're stuck in the middle and don't know where to go. We're in a really bad situation here. So why? Well, okay, think about last chapter. Where did a huge number of immigrants come from in the late 1800s and early 1900s? Yeah, Germany. So how many of those immigrants really want to go to war against their home country where their Uncle Fritz still lives? And who was our number one trading partner in the world? Yeah, Britain. So why are we in the middle? Because our two besties are now at war with each other. And we don't know where to go. And that's where this chapter is going to lead if we decide to go that far, if you follow me through it, into tomorrow and Wednesday for sure. And then Thursday and Friday, we'll see what we want to do. But we'll take some time to get into it. So the fuse the spark that lights the fuse. This already exists. Now, when George Washington left office in blah, 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 whatever year it was, he warned America against two things. He left and he said, only two things you got to watch out for. He said, do not form political parties. It will divide the country. Huh. Turn on the news and see what you think about that. He was right. And then he says, don't form permanent alliances. Permanent alliances create a world war. George Washington knew well ahead of his time. So we look at this. Here's the Allied powers, and we will become a member of the Allied powers. Serbia, Russia, France, Great Britain. Italy started out on the side of the Germans and the Austrians, but they switched sides, and several others. And the causes of the war really quickly, and then we'll be done and talk about the trenches tomorrow. Imperialism, that means nations seeking more resources. So if you want more resources, you have to expand and take more territory. Nationalism is just a sense of loyalty to your country. You know, a lot of times people are willing to fight for your country just because you're told so. Fight for America. Okay, what are we fighting for? It doesn't matter. Fight for America. Militarism. Some of these countries, not necessarily the United States, we were pretty small and weak militarily heading into World War I, but some of them, the Austrians and the Germans and even the French to a certain extent, had built up tremendous, powerful militaries. Well, if you have a big, powerful military, you're much more likely to take it out for a spin. You know, if you have a brand new Corvette, you're not just going to leave it in the garage all the time. Every now and then on a nice sunny afternoon, you're going to take it for a drive. So why not test out the power of these militaries, especially if you're interested in imperialism and seeking more strength. And then those entangling alliances. So there's 4 causes, not just the assassination of the Archduke. So all this mess caused by this, but even if the Gavrilo Princip doesn't assassinate Francis Ferdinand, this probably is going to happen. It's just a matter of what event will kick it off. In this case, it was this event. And when will it take place? So 1918, before the United States gets involved. But if you go back up here, Princip is assassinated in 1914. So the United States remains neutral as long as we can. In fact, Woodrow Wilson gets elected president with the campaign slogan, he kept us out of war. He wins a second term in office because he kept us out of war. America did not want to go fight. Wars are expensive and people die. So hopefully you got something out of that lesson today besides just the sheer confusion of what the heck entanglement means. But it's a fun lesson. I enjoy teaching it. We'll get into trench warfare tomorrow, how disgusting it is, how big of a deal it is, how deadly it is. There's some great movies about that. We'll get into great detail in that, or some detail in that tomorrow. You guys have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in Zoom sometime today.